Hi, this is Christian. So in this video, let's talk about the modules and the components and details. So here is the add module. Okay, so an Angular application must have a root module. And the add module, this is the root module. Okay, so let's look at the syntax here for a minute here. Let me clean up a little bit here so that it's nicer to easier to see. Put it in just a single line. Okay, so let me just put some spaces in between as well. Okay, so a typical module file will look like this. Usually you have you would structure it this way. If you look at it, it says the app.module.ts, and then you have app.component.ts. The app, this is for the spec means just for like testing purposes, so we don't have to worry about that for now. And then you have the app.component.html and then CSS. So they all kind of follow the same structure here. And all of these files are under the app folder, right? So you name it this way. So if you do have another folder, a subfolder inside the app, maybe you have another module called a user. So you would say under the user folder, you have a user.module.ts and so forth, okay? But one of this module must be the root module. And the only difference between the root module and the rest of the sub-module, other module, is basically just this line here, the bootstrap, and I'll explain what that means. So, in a module, this is what you would have. You would need to import the ng module. Okay. This browser module here is only needed because this is the root module. If it's not the root module, you don't need this. You don't need to import this. Okay. But the root module looks like this. So you have the browser module, you have the ng module, so that you can use the ng directive, and then you have your root component. You must have a root component. Okay. This is like on top of the umbrella. And then after that, you have to use the special decorator. These are called decorators, and you have a ng decorator, you have a component decorator. Mostly those two are the most important ones, but for now this is ng decorator. It's a metadata. It tells Angular that what follows is a class. This class is called add module. Again, the naming it's very consistent here, right? This is the app module for your app folder. If you have a user module, you say user module or things like that. Okay, so you have three things: the import statements, the Angular decorator, ng module decorator, and the class that you need to export out. So that means it needs to go out one more level above in order to use it, right? Okay, if you don't put that here, if you miss that, okay, if you don't have that special ng module decorator, then Angular will not know that this module that you're writing, this one here, includes this component. It does not know that this is an Angular component. So there are two separate components here because this one looks exactly like JavaScript. Okay, if you are familiar with modules in JavaScript, you would do exactly the same thing. Looks exactly, you import a module this way, you would export your module the exactly same way. But if you want this to be an Angular module, then you must put that in between here, right above this export here. So now Angular will know that, okay, so this module is an Angular module and not a JavaScript module. Why? Well, because this module contains a component, right? We input that component here, and this component has some scripts that are TypeScript and not JavaScript. And so therefore, if you don't put through the Angular engine, then it does not know. The browser does not understand TypeScript because it's not native to the browser. So therefore, Angular must convert any TypeScript into pure native JavaScript in order for the browser to understand. That is why you need this module here, okay? So inside this module, let's talk about this. You have about 4 different lines. There are actually a little bit more, but mainly just is 4. The first part is called the declarations. property. This is where you would include all your components. Again, remember the other video I mentioned that you can have multiple components in this module. Here we just have one app module. I could have another one, right? And many other components, like a little widget of a weather widget, a search module, right? If I do that, I want to add to this main module called app module, then I need to import that here, include its name inside here. So if I add another module, maybe like app comp 2, then I put that here, and I put a comma between, so I know that I'm including the second component. Again, I need to import that first in here. Okay, but since only one, that's all you need. You need one. Then you need to import the browser module. Again, this is only required because this is the root module. Otherwise, you can leave that out. Providers, you leave that out also. It's for like injection stuff. You can leave that out. But the bootstrap is important. If this is the root module, you must bootstrap a component to the index file. Okay, so that's why we call it the app module. Is the root module. I mean, a component. You know, so many terms here. And then we bootstrap that. We attach that to the HTML, which is a browser base. The platform here means that it's going to go on the web browser. You could have a different platform. It could have been going to a mobile device or something, right? So platform browser. So this one is bootstrapped to the index. Now, and then when you come out of this app, that's why there is a main TS here. This is the main entry to your Angular application. So you import the app module, this guy right here, to the main entry page. And then now we're going to bootstrap that module again to the actual file, the index file. And you may wonder, how does it know what the index file is, right? So like this index file, how does it know it goes here? And how it knows is depending on this JSON file called angular.json. So it needs to have this file. This file will tell the Angular engine where to look for, where to start. So if you look at this, you see that there is the index. Okay, when you build your application, this is the entry file called index, the root folder umbrella, and the main file that injects all the module is coming through the main TS. Right? So if you want to call it something else besides index, you change it here. Okay, so for example, if I leave it index as it was, and you know what, let me do this so we can see the result live on the screen. I did something wrong. Okay, well, that was strange. Okay, anyway, so here is the file, right? And let me also minimize this so you can see. Because it happens live. Okay, just let me just show a little bit. So I'm gonna go like this. Oops. So here's the Angular page. I'm gonna close this one for now because it's consuming my RAM. Okay, so this is the index file, right? If I change the index file to something else, if you want to, or the angular.json file, if you change it to something else besides index, let's just say if I call it, start or something, right? If I change to start, if I save that, okay, if I save start, and see if it's still working. Did I turn that off already? Yeah. Oh well. But anyways, yeah. Usually you can change it, right? You can change that to a different file, and then you would also have to change your index file to that, to match that. Okay. But again, I don't recommend going here and make changes. I wanted to make some changes, but I take that back because I don't want to mess up the whole thing. So just want to show you what the entry points are. So index file goes here. You enter to the main TS. If you change that main TS to something else, it's gonna fail. Okay. So if I, for example, I change it, I guess if I change it, it's safer. if I change it to like main2, okay, then as you can see, it does not know what main TS is based on the JSON file. It looks for main TS. But since they call it main2, then if I change that to main2, hopefully, if I save that, and if I reload, see if it loads. Yeah, so, well, I have to recompile it, the whole thing. So that is where it's looking for, and that's why it knows that the main TS is the entry point to your application. All right, I just want to show that one. Okay, so you bootstrap that to your browser, and then that's how it goes. So mainly you won't touch this main TS, you leave it as is. So the add module is the root one, and then the component. So again, the module, you import the ng module, you import the component or components you want to use, you include the ng module decorator, and in there, you usually, if it's not the main root module, you just need the declarations. So all these could be empty like that. Okay, if it's not the root module, and then you need to export the module so that other modules can use it. Okay, so it needs to bubble up to the top of the tree. It's a hierarchical structure. So that's your module. So now let's go to the component. Okay, let me close these. So in the app component, it looks very similar to the module actually if you look at it, except it's a component instead. So instead of importing the module, we import the component. Okay, and then same thing, you want to put the decorator here, the add component. Otherwise, it does not know that this is a Angular component. Okay, so you have the import here, the add component decorator, and then you have the export of your component. Okay, here you put your your TypeScript code, and I'll show you why that is important. So let's look inside this component block here. So the first thing you need to do is a selector. And this selector here is unique to however you want to call it. Okay, it must be unique. It needs to know where it's going to go on the page. And this component, as you can see, we are exporting this out. Okay, exporting this out using this template, and we're going to attach this template to the DOM at this selector. This selector is an Angular selector and not your usual H1, H2, or HTML selector. Okay, so this Angular selector, I just happen to call it Woohoo. We called that earlier, but we can change it to whatever you want. So Woohoo. So we're going to export this out to a module that uses this component. So component cannot be used without a module. You have to export that to a module. So we export this out. Okay, so that's what selector is for. And then you also supply the template. Here you see a template URL. That is different than a template alone without a URL. And you cannot use both of them at the same time. It's one or the other. And what's the difference? Well, the difference is this. If I comment this out, the difference is that if you use template, that means your template will go right in here. Like if you say H1 hi, right? H1. This is your template. And this is what you saw in the book as well. Let me show you on around page 40 or so, right? That's the area a lot of you have. Right on page 40, as you can see here, let me maximize this. So here is the template, right? It uses, the book uses just template, and you put your information here, your HTML plus the Angular directives is Angular here, and the template. And this little backtick here is important. This one, again, I mentioned to you already in the announcement. You use this for multi-line coding in JavaScript. And if you don't do this, you have an error. Okay, so you could put your template directly here. And that is why I can put that here. If I save that now, I'm not going to use this file anymore. I use my local template, inline. You call this inline template. I save that. For example, if I save it, you will see that the output changes to my template. It won't use the HTML here anymore because I changed that. Okay, but because when you build your file, it gets pretty large, right? It gets large and it looks kind of ugly here. It's it's hard to manage. So instead of putting it inline, you will put in a separate file. We call that the app.component.html file, and then we'll link to that file through another property called template URL. And now it links to that HTML, and so you see this result here. Okay, the style is exactly the same thing. Here I have an external style sheet. I could say style, and here I could just style whatever I need to style locally here inline, and I comment that out. I think, is it style, or did I not do it correctly? Let's see if I go like maybe. Okay, I usually don't use this, so I may not remember the syntax. But anyways, you would do the same thing. I think it is. And be like, for example, h1. Or is it not style? I thought it's style. Oh, styles. Okay, the styles. Maybe that's what it was. Okay, I probably have a wrong syntax. Something pretty sure. But anyways, you could put your style locally here using the style rule. Maybe that, right? Let's see if I do it correctly. H1. Let's see, H1. I usually don't use this. H1's color red. Let's see if that works. So if I save that, and I'm not sure if it made any changes, but yeah, so it changes that to a red. You saw that, right? So if I change it to blue, to green, save, and it's green. Okay, so you could build your style this way in this array. But again, it gets complicated. It gets really large. So instead of doing this inline, you would then export that out to a style sheet, as you see here. And there's nothing here in this case, but and then you would just attach it to the style URLs here. So you had two options. Okay, and that's pretty much. There are probably a few more properties here, but mainly there's these three: the selector and the template. Again, this is optional. You don't need to have these style rules if you don't need the style sheet. So usually just these two, the selector and the template. And then you need to export this component out so that module can use, and then you put your data in here. Okay. Now this data here, like the title here, we'll talk about that later, it actually injects into the HTML. Right? If you look at HTML, there is a title. There's a property here, right? A title, and that is where it comes from this component here. If I change that to, let's just say, a message, right? If I save that, and you'll see that that should go away. Welcome to, it doesn't know. And if I go to that one, the file, it changes to message. If I save that file, and it should come back. Okay, so that's how you bind data. This is, again, one-way binding. I'm changing something here, reflects on the view, right? I can't change from the view going back to the component. So that's the other direction of data binding. This is called the event binding. So this is a component property binding. This is a property of this class, right? Okay, so this is how component works. So once you build your component, build your view, what it looks like, if you like it, give it a selector and export it out so that this module will use it, import that in, and then add it to the declaration and so on. Okay, so I hope this is clearing things up between your modules and your components. Okay. If you have any questions on these, let me know. I will do more videos to go a little bit deeper into the components, mostly components here, and also I will show you how to create multiple modules and how you add those into your application. And most of these are actually covered in chapter 4 of the book, which I don't know if you have the book already, but if not, I will provide the PDF so you can look at it as well. And again, we'll do more examples, so I want to make sure you understand how all these things flow. Okay, again, just component, you have a template, get a root, export that out, and then in the module, import that in, add it to declarations, and then export this module out, and you keep going up the chain. Okay, thank you.